Okay, so I heard that the divorce rate in the military is really, really high. Um, let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, so that's true. The divorce rate is it's statistics, hate to go there, but statistics actually show that it is higher amongst military members than it is the general population. So it's a pretty nasty rate. And there's of course a lot of things that come along with that. So like we have a lot of people in the military who get married because they're leaving home and they have a significant other and they don't want to leave one another. They're afraid of what's going to happen when their service member goes off, or the service member's afraid of what's going to happen when they go off. And so kind of make that quick decision like, let's get married. And that's really, really tough. You have people who are going in with the intention of supporting their service member, not really fully knowing what to expect. And the military lifestyle is no joke. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's hard on relationships, it's hard on individuals, like emotions. It's hard. It is a tough lifestyle. So if you don't know what to expect, gonna get clobbered a lot.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you don't have like your community or your self-care in place, that's going to impact you and your relationship. And then you have deployments.
Yeah.
And those long, I've talked about this before, like occasionally you have a long tour where a service member has to go to somewhere like Korea or something. And sometimes they're allowed to take their families. It just depends on the location, but sometimes that they're not. That's a
Mm.
really, really tough thing to be long distance with everything going on. There's so much that goes into it. So yeah, it's really high. The rate is sad.
Do you have any tips for like other spouses on how to maybe make it easier for them through some of those trying times?
Yeah, I do. The biggest thing that I cannot stress enough is making sure that you're cared for. Nobody else is going to care for you the way that you can care for you, right? So, yes, of course, we feel obligated. One, I think I can speak for most spouses when I say we feel obligated to support our service members. I mean, that's what spouses do, right? We support one another. But our service member is doing this thing that's exceptionally important and difficult and scary. And so, do we feel obligated to show up in the best way we can? Yeah, a lot of us do, of course.
Mhm.
But at the same time, if you're not caring for yourself and your needs while they're doing what they're doing, you're going to eventually feel the impact of not having cared for yourself. So the thing that I cannot stress enough is make sure you're showing up for you. So that's through self-care, of course. And I've talked about this in other videos, and I have an entire self-care ebook where I go into the not just like it's not just the gym, it's not just what you eat, right? It's all of the things that you do to give back to yourself. It's the deep breathing, it's the journaling, the meditation, it's the surrounding yourself with community that's supportive and loving and that you can fall into when you just need to fall somewhere, because that's okay too, right? So, anyways, I have this ebook that really dives into what self-care can look for you, and it helps to start to understand it and implement it. And
Mm.
actually I have kind of an offshoot story. You want a little detour
Sure.
here? So it's kind of along the lines of the importance of self-care, right? So when my husband was deployed, this was long before became a life coach. It was before I was really doing even the entrepreneurial thing. I was a stay-at-home mom, and he deployed. And gratefully, where we were living, they had something called hourly care. So I could drop my kids off I could just walk in and drop off for an hour, 2 hours if I needed to, and then come back and get them when I was ready. I could do my grocery shopping. So what I was doing though is I was on a very regular basis. I was dropping my kids off at hourly care and I was going to the gym regularly.
Mhm.
And then that was it though. Like that was
Mm.
the extent of my self-care. And where that landed me was pretty physically fit and mentally exhausted and overwhelmed because I
Yeah.
didn't know at the time that that's not a whole picture of self-care. That's a little piece of your self-care. And so I didn't have the the mental and emotional outlets that I needed to work through what was going on with my husband being deployed. And I had a 9 month old and he was 2 or 3 year old. I don't want to do math right now, but little ones, right? I didn't have the outlet. So I'm exhausted. I'm the only caregiver. I'm not in a place where I have a ton of friends at that point just yet.
Right,
Anyway, so that's the piece that was missing. Right. So I think that's missing for most people. A lot of folks just don't realize that if you are going to the gym, that's freaking fantastic. And if you're eating healthy, that's freaking fantastic too. And that's only a tiny little piece of your self-care. You're still going to get exhausted and burned out and completely overwhelmed and just done with
right.
everything if you don't realize that there's whole other areas that need to be attended to and then, commit to attending to them. So, um yeah, that's my little spiel on how
I think that's super true. I go to the gym, consistently and
Mhm.
regularly, and if I was, going by myself, then I could see obviously I would, still be getting the benefits of working out and everything, but because I'm going with my friends, it becomes a therapy session in addition to working out. And it's really helpful because, having someone there to support you is just really has been so helpful for me. But one thing that I stopped doing, and I see there being a little bit of a gap for me, is the journaling. And we've talked about this where I'm not doing the things that I used to do that were really important to me because I haven't prioritized them. And I think that it can be really hard to prioritize self care when you're in the midst of the chaos. And so, this was just a random question, but how would you say is a good way for someone to make self care a priority when they're in the midst of like all the chaos?
Mm. No, it's such a good question because the thing is, you said something that I thought was absolutely key, and I'm glad you asked that question because I was going to pinpoint. You said to prioritize. You said I didn't prioritize, and the thing that I think most of us, at least at the beginning, before we're really fully aware of what's going on, say is I don't have the time.
Right.
Because to be fair, it feels like we don't have the time, and if our schedule is loaded we look at our planner if you even have a planner or schedule but you kind of think about it you literally can look like oh I don't have the time. You
Yeah.
do have the time. It's about prioritizing the things that are the most important to you. So when you prioritize that self-care you realize that you make the time for it because it is a thing that's extraordinarily important to your success in all areas of your life to
Right.
just being happy, you know peaceful, all of the things. So the thing that I go to first, so ridiculous. There's going to be mindset stuff, don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
as far as like physical steps that you can take, put it in your phone or
Yeah.
planner. If I have a planner, most I think entrepreneurs have some kind of a planner where whether it's digital or paper. Most of us have
Yeah.
planners. Make it either come up on your phone and remind you that it's time to do that, make the commitment to letting that happen. And if you can, find a time of day that seems pretty consistent where you do have a little bit of a lull from family stuff. Like for me, I'm an early morning riser, so some people are going to be like, "F that, I'm not doing that." But like five o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, I get up and I do my journaling and my meditation and my me time stuff. But for some people, I know you're not going to do it. You're just not, and that's fine. When is the time of day where you have that lull? Is it just before you go to bed? Um,
Mm.
but make sure
Finding
that
the
it
time.
is prioritized and it is put into your planner, your schedule, your alerts, your reminders, and
You know
commit
what
yourself to.
sorry to cut you off, but
No, no, no.
do you know what I was just thinking while you're talking about that? And it has worked so well for me in the past. And so I'm going to obviously run out and buy one right now was the self journal. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like a planner slash self care journal in one. And basically you write down, your schedule, things you need to do for that day. And then it asks you, in the morning, like, what three things are you grateful for? and what are your targets for the day? What are your, and then it asks you like, because you're supposed to visit it twice. So you come back and then it says, okay, so these were your targets, but what did you accomplish?
Mm,
And now at the end of the day, what things are you grateful for at the end of the day? And although it's not like a full journaling session,
mhm.
it still makes you think a lot, right? Because you're not supposed to put the same thing in the morning gratitude as the evening gratitude. So you can't just fall off and just, every day talk about my kids. I'm grateful for this, but maybe really honing in and saying this experience with my kids, I'm grateful for that versus just a very
Yeah.
broad sense of gratitude.
Yeah, that's one of the key things, right? Is getting specific about what you're grateful for. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that I would, first of all, I love that. I haven't actually heard of that.
You haven't? Oh,
That
it's
journal.
great.
No, that's brilliant in my opinion. But the other thing is that when you're doing your gratitude journaling, to feel the emotion of gratitude. Don't just write it like, I'm grateful for my kids. Of course I am. Am I feeling that in that moment? Not if I'm rushing through it. I'm absolutely
Right.
not feeling the gratitude. So it's about slowing down and letting that emotion fill you, like really
Yeah.
feeling in that, experience of, um, I'm grateful for spending time with my kids, or but be honest with yourself, right? If you're mad at your kids that day and you're truly not feeling the gratitude, that's okay. Write about something else that day.
Or like, they say everything that happens in our life is for our benefit. So whether or not your kids, have frustrated you today, there has to be a lesson in that, right? So what is the lesson that you learned from that experience? And
Most
there you can take some gratitude in that, basically.
100%. But it sounds to me like you're somebody who's done the work, at least to some degree, right? So yes,
I
and
mean,
but if
I
you're just
have, yeah.
right, absolutely have. But if you're just getting
I have.
started and you're like, that doesn't feel right to me, don't be in that space. Find something that you really can like get on board with and agree with and really allow that sensation, emotion to fill you and run through you. But yeah, I mean, like, absolutely too, though, as you progress, yes,
Yeah,
find the moment even in the difficulties. That's an
yeah,
incredible place to go is, yeah, that sucked. And I admit that it sucked. And I'm not going to pretend that it didn't suck. What else was there? Like, what can I take from it? Right? What did I learn? What is something that I was supposed to pay attention to that caught my mind, my eye, or whatever? I was like,
yeah,
okay, that little lesson was in there. Yeah, that's
right.
brilliant. Brilliant.
I think that it's hard for people to sometimes see the benefit of the quote unquote bad things that happen in their life. So
Totally.
I think that's just a different perspective to look at it and kind of, what's the takeaway for me? Like I had to learn a lesson, right? I
Yeah.
realized that in the failure of my second marriage, like there was something big that I needed to learn, and this was a great lesson for me.
Yeah.
And so even though I don't journal like I used to or anything like that, and I haven't been doing the things that I still have that benefit of having done all of that work, but I feel like I need to get back into it. It's like almost like a calling to
Mhm.
you. Once you have done it, I feel like you need to maintain, you need to keep going. Do you find that to be true?
So, yes, oddly enough, I had years, like several years, where I got up and I gratitude journaled at least 5 days, at least during the weekdays, consistently. And gratitude journal, if other things were coming up, other types of journaling, my silent time. So if that was like meditation or just contemplation, whatever it was, and I was really consistent. And then very recently, like good few months back, I fell off completely. I started waking up later in the morning. I wasn't doing my 5 a.m. wake up. I was getting up at like 6, just enough time to get the kids stuff ready before they woke up for school. And it was fine. I've done a lot of inner work and I was okay. I didn't completely, lose my ish. But recently I got right back into gratitude journaling. I'm talking about like a week ago. I got
Yeah.
into it and my soul was like, girl, where have you been? This is
Yeah.
what you were missing. And immediately it felt so good.
Mhm.
And this, since I think what happened early on was I got complacent. I wasn't allowing the feeling of gratitude. I was just writing, like, I'm grateful for the pretty tree outside my window. I'm grateful for the coffee I'm about to have. I was just
Mhm.
making a list.
Yeah,
And when
yeah,
I sat down recently and I started up again and I was intentional about feeling the gratitude and like letting my body respond to the gratitude, it was
yeah.
so different to be back in it again. And it made such a massive impact. So, yeah.
Oh, just really quick, it just reminds me of the, Marie Kondo, method of organization. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You hold each thing, "How does this make me feel?" "Well, it
Right.
makes me feel productive, so I'm gonna keep it."
Yes. Right. But there's
You
something to that feeling. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say there's something to it. I'm a somatic coach. I
know? Right,
deal with
right.
bringing that mind body connection back together. But when we forget how to listen to our body, a big piece of us is being ignored. But
Mhm.
then when we re-engage the body, we're like, oh, it's a whole other level of experience beyond just the thoughts and feelings you're having
Right.
rather.